of the Snow Queen. Once upon a time, there was a beautiful fairy, who people called the Snow Queen, because she lived on the highest, most solitary peak of the Alps. Some mountain folk and shepherds climbed to the summits to admire her, but once they saw her, they immediately fell in love with her. Every man felt that he would willingly give his heart and soul to marry her, but fate had decided that no mortal would ever marry the Snow Queen. Yet, in spite of that, many brave souls did their best to approach her, hoping always to persuade her. Each suitor was allowed to enter the great ice palace with the crystal roof, where the Snow Queen's throne stood. But the second he declared his love and asked for her hand, thousands of goblins appeared to grab him and take him far, far away. Without the slightest emotion, the Snow Queen would watch this scene with her heart of ice, unable to feel any compassion at all. The legend of the Crystal Palace and the beautiful heartless Snow Queen spread as far as the most distant alpine valley. The story reached the ears of a hunter, and fascinated by the tale, he decided to set out and try his luck. Leaving his valley, he journeyed for days on end, climbing the snow-covered mountain faces, scaling ice-bound peaks, and defying the bitterly cold winds that swept through the alpine gullies. More than once he felt all was lost, but the thought of the lovely Snow Queen gave him new strength and kept him moving onwards. At last, after many days of climbing, he saw glinting in the sunshine before him the tall, transparent spires of the ice palace. Summoning all his courage, the young man entered the throne room where the Snow Queen stood still. He was so struck by the Snow Queen's beauty that he could not utter a single word. Shy and timid, he did not dare speak. Instead, he knelt in admiration before the Queen for hours on end without opening his mouth. The Queen looked at him silently, and as long as he did not ask her hand in marriage, the goblins would not take him away. Days passed, and the hunter stayed in the palace admiring the Snow Queen without saying a word. Then, to her great surprise, the Snow Queen realized she was becoming quite fond of this hunter, who was much younger and more handsome than her other suitors had been. But the Snow Queen didn't dare to admit, not even to herself, that she would actually like to marry the young man. In the meantime, the goblins kept watch over their mistress. First, they were astonished. Then, as time went on, they became more and more upset, for they rightly feared that their queen might be on the point of breaking the law and challenging fate. Seeing that the queen was slow to give the order to get rid of her suitor, the goblins decided to take matters into their own hands. One night, as dusk fell, they slipped out of the cracks in the rock, clustered round the young hunter, grabbed him with their claws, and took him away. The Snow Queen could only watch the whole scene from the window, since there was nothing she could do to stop them. But just then she felt her icy heart melting, and a single tear dropped from her eye, the first one she had ever shed. the Snow Queen's tear fell onto a stone, where it turned into a little silvery starflower. This was the first Edelweiss, the flower that grows only on the highest, most inaccessible peaks in the Alps, on the edge of the abyss and the precipice. With that, the beautiful but cold-hearted fairy suddenly became a woman capable of love and emotion, and she decided to leave her palace and go and seek her beloved hunter. Stories have been told that they indeed met again and were very happy together. The end.
What is the best way to improve your listening? In this video, I'm going to share with you the technique I use to improve my listening. This technique works, and I wish I had known this technique a lot sooner because it's easy to do and very effective. So let's get started. First, let's talk about why most people fail to improve their listening. Improving your listening skills takes time. It's a long-term process. But most people forget that, or they just don't know. So when they practice listening, they use methods that are inconvenient, something that is not easy to do. So it's impossible for them to continue doing it for a long time. As a result, most people quit before they get any results. But how do I know this? Well, I know this because I have made the same mistake. I have tried several methods that were inconvenient, like watching the same movie twice, with subtitles first and then without subtitles. That was so boring, so I quit after the fourth movie. I also tried listening and then writing down what I heard, but that was too much work and I was too busy. So let's take this back to you. How do you make sure that you don't fail like I did? Well, if you want to succeed, the method you use must be convenient. It must be easy to do. If it's not, you will probably quit before you see an improvement. So let me share with you the most convenient way to improve your listening. It's very simple. There are only 2 steps that you need to take. Here's the first step. Download a lot of listening materials to your phone or MP3 player. Now, the best listening materials are the ones where people are just talking naturally. They're just having real conversations. When you use this kind of materials, you are listening to a lot of common everyday words that people use in real life. Now don't worry, at the end of this video, I'm going to give you a resource you can go to download this kind of materials for free. So that's the first step. The next step is very important. Do not miss this step. The next step is to listen to the materials. But here's the key. Do not do it in your free time. Instead, do it when you are already doing something else. Something that doesn't require much of your attention. Listen to the materials while commuting, while waiting in line, while exercising, and so on. Use those times to practice listening so that you don't have to spend extra time. Now, why do we have to do this? Well, the reason is that we want to make it convenient. When it's easy to do, you are likely to do it for a long time. And if you do it long enough, your listening skills will definitely improve. Now let me show you something that might shock you. Let's compare this technique with watching movies, which is how many people improve their listening. If you start using this technique today, and if you do it for 30 minutes per day, 1 year from now, you will have listened to 10,950 minutes of real English conversations. That's a lot of listening. And because you're not doing it in your free time, the amount of extra time spent is 0. That's awesome. Now, what about watching movies? Well, first of all, in a movie, there isn't a conversation or a dialogue in every part, right? If you watch an action movie, for example, you might see a fight scene, an explosion, a car chase scene, and so on. So let's say that on average, the length of a movie is 100 minutes. 50% of those are conversations. The rest is something else. If you watch 4 movies a week or 208 movies a year, in 1 year, you will have listened to 10,400 minutes of fake English conversations. Now here's the worst part. Because each movie is 100 minutes long, this method requires you to spend as much as 20,800 minutes of your free time. That is really, really sad. Now let's compare the two methods side by side. Now I have a question for you. If you use this technique instead of watching movies, and you save over 20,000 minutes per year, how would you spend these 20,000 minutes? Reading English books to increase your vocabulary, practicing speaking, or something else? Leave a comment and let me know. So now you know the power of this technique. Let me repeat something important. This is a long-term process. It takes time, so please be patient. Fortunately, now you know this technique, so I know that you will succeed. Okay, now it's time for me to share some listening materials with you. But first, I want to ask you a favor. It took me several days to create this video and find some materials for you. If you find this video useful, take a few seconds and share it with one English learning community. You will not only help them, but help me also. And then, just click here to get some free listening materials.